Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Elisa Maria Designs. That's me. That's my arm right there. Hi, how are you? It is Monday, May 18th, and I'm getting ready to read one chapter, maybe two chapters of My Cousin Rachel. But first, let me just tell you, we have a new member. Hi, Cynthia. I'm looking forward to meeting you, and you're going to find that you're going to meet all these members and you're going to feel like you knew them forever. They're so warm and welcoming and friendly, and that's the kind of environment that I have here. I'm so looking forward to meeting you. So I am picking up where I left off. I did I did my first time in painting session since I came out of the hospital, and this was like over 2 hours, and the first 40 minutes, I believe, was used for Self-Care Sunday. So if you're interested in how this all developed, where we're at, then you can go and pop in on Self-Care Sunday. The canvas is Unbridled Spirit by Lori Prindle, and I got this canvas from Beach City Boutique, and we are doing 20 by 20 sections each month. This is a year-long event. And then in July, I'm going to be taking out Mary Morgan, which is the kind of Christmas in July canvas. I love this canvas. I love its name. I love the painting. I love the rendering. There's 17 enhancements on this canvas, and they're spectacular. And in this section, there is a lot of the enhancements going on. So I'm really happy about that you get to see them being put down. I am using, for the first time, Patsy's putty. I have the white, basic white, and I believe I have the basic black too. The other thing I wanted to tell you guys is that you know that I made it down to the shore, the Jersey shore. We had to make a U-turn and come back the very next day because Foofy was not having it. He was not traveling in the car. He just was not. He goes to Petco. We ride him down the lakes. I don't know if it was just him seeing things being moved in a car, and I can only imagine the last time he saw that happening. That's how we acquired him. And, you know, he had lost what he thought was his forever family, and he got a new one. And now here we go again. So I'm going to put a video link to Jackson Galaxy. Jackson, if you know him, he's like the cat whisperer. And this video is about moving your cat, whether it's a permanent move, a temporary move, whether you're traveling by car, train, plane, how to do it where they feel comfortable and not completely frantic. I mean, we were down there and we just put our stuff and our clothes and everything into our rental, our summer rental, and then the next day we got up and we made a U-turn right back to Philly, and we've just been, and everybody knows, like, I'm his imprint, so he's been even more attached to me. Foofy is not, I'm talking about you. Cuddly, you can't pick him up, you can't hold him, but yesterday he was literally planting himself on top of me, grabbing my arm, wanting me to hold him and pet him. He was really frightened by the whole experience. So there's some really good tips and tricks about how to prepare your cat for a move that, you know, I share everything with you guys. It may come up, you may not even need it, but you might remember, or maybe you know someone. They're really, really good tips to making your cat feel comfortable with this move. And with that, let's get on to My Cousin Rachel. I can't believe I'm reading today. John's going to be so jealous because he is so hooked on that one chapter that he read for you guys. He wants to read the whole book, but I think he wanted to be here for when I was reading, but he had to come home today anyway because he has a little part-time job. He helps his friend who has a butcher shop, and he does his deliveries when he calls him, and he called him in for Monday. And I got myself all situated, and I'm like, it's pretty quiet. He's working till 3. It's about 11:48 right now. I'm like, I'm going to read, and I'm hoping I get 2 chapters in for you guys. So let's get started. My Cousin Rachel, chapter 23. In the morning, when I sat to breakfast, looking out upon the blustering, windy day with eyes that saw nothing, Seacombe came into the dining room with a note upon the salver. The salver is a silver tray. We have Seacombe running around with the silver again. My heart jumped at the sight of it. It might be that she asked me to call upon her in her room. But it was not from Rachel. The handwriting was larger, rounder. The note was from Louise. "Mr. Kendall's groom has just brought this, sir," said Seacombe. "He is waiting for an answer." I read it through. "Dear Philip, I have been so much distressed by what occurred last night. I think I understand what you felt, more so than my father. Please remember, I am your friend and always will be. I have to go to town this morning. If you want someone to talk to, I can meet with you outside the church a little before noon. Louise." I put the note in my pocket and asked Seacombe to bring me a piece of paper and a pen. My first instinct, as always, at the suggestion of any encounter with no matter whom, but more especially upon this morning, was to scribble a word of thanks and then refuse. When Seacombe brought the pen and paper, though, I decided otherwise. A sleepless night, an agony of loneliness made me of a sudden yearn for company. Louise was better known to me than anyone. I wrote, therefore, telling her I would be in town that morning and would look for her outside the church. "Give this to Mr. Kendall's groom," I said, "and tell Wellington I shall want Gypsy saddled at 11. After breakfast, I went to the office and cleared up the bills and wrote the letter that I had started yesterday. Somehow it was simpler today. A part of my brain worked in dull fashion, took note of facts and figures, and jotted them down as if compelled by force of habit. My work accomplished, I walked round to the stable in a haste to get away from the house and all it meant to me. I did not ride by the avenue through the woods, with its memories of yesterday, but straight across the park and to the high road. My mare was very fresh and nervous as a fawn. Starting at nothing, she pricked and shied and backed into the hedgerows, and the tearing wind did its worst to both of us. The bluster that should have been in February and March had come at last. Gone was the mellow warmth of the past weeks, the smooth sea and sun. Great clouds with dragging tails, black-edged and filled with rain, came scudding from the west, and now again, with sudden bursting fury, emptying themselves as hail. The sea was a turmoil in the western bay. In the fields on either side of the road, the gulls screamed and dipped in the fresh plowed earth, seeking the green shoots fostered by the early spring. Nat Bray, whom I dismissed so swiftly the preceding morning, stood by his gate as I passed it, a wet sack hanging about his shoulders to protect him from the hail. And he put up his hand and shouted me good morning, but the sound of his voice carried beyond me and away. Even from the high road, I could hear the sea. To the west, where it ran shallow over the sands, it was short and steep, turned backwards on itself and curling into foam. But to the east, before the estuary, the great long rollers came, spending themselves upon the rocks and at the harbor entrance, and the roar of the breakers mingled with the biting wind that swept the hedgerows and forced back the budding trees. There were few people about as I descended the hill into the town, and those I saw went about their business, bent sideways with the wind, their faces nipped with the sun and cold. I left Gypsy at the Rose and Crown and walked up the path to the church. Louise was sheltering beneath the porch. I opened the heavy door and we went in together to the church itself. It seemed dark and peaceful after the bluster of the day without, yet with it, too, that chill so unmistakable, oppressive, heavy, and the moldering, churchy smell. We went and sat by the marble recumbent figure of my ancestor, his sons and daughters weeping at his feet, and I thought how many Ashleys were scattered about the countryside, some here, others in my own parish, and how they had loved and suffered and then gone upon their way. Instinct hushed us both in the silent church, and we spoke in whispers. I have been unhappy about you for so long, said Louise, since Christmas and before, but I could not tell you. You would not have listened. There was no need, I answered. All had gone very well until last night. The fault was mine in saying what I did. You would not have said it, she replied, unless you had believed it to be the truth. There has been deception from the first, and you were prepared for it in the beginning, before she came. There was no deception, I said, until the last few hours. If I was mistaken, there is no one but myself to blame. A sudden shower stung the church windows southward, and the long aisle with the tall pillars turned darker than before. Why did she come here last September, said Louise. Why did she travel all this way to seek you out? It was not sentiment that brought her here, or idle curiosity. She came to England and to Cornwall for a purpose, which she has now accomplished. I turned and looked at her. Her blue eyes were simple and direct. What do you mean? I asked. She has the money, said Louise. That was the plan she had in mind before she took her journey. My tutor at Harrow, when teaching in fifth form, told us once that truth was something intangible, unseen, which sometimes we stumbled upon and did not recognize, but was found and held and understood only by old people near their death, or sometimes by the very pure, the very young. You are mistaken, I said. You know nothing about her. She is a woman of impulse and emotion, and her moods are unpredictable and strange. God knows, but it is not in her nature to be otherwise. Impulse drove her from Florence. Emotion brought her here. She stayed because she was happy, and because she had a right to stay. Louise looked at me in pity. She put her hand upon my knee. Had you been less vulnerable, she said, Mrs. Ashley would not have stayed. She would have called upon my father, struck a close, fair bargain, and then departed. You have misunderstood her motives from the first. I could have stood it better, I thought, as I stumbled from the pew into the aisle. If Louise had struck Rachel with her hands or spat upon her, torn her hair, her gown, that would be primitive and animal. That would be fighting fair. But this, in the quietude of the church, with Rachel absent, was slander, almost blasphemy. I can't sit here and listen to you, I said. I wanted your comfort and your sympathy. If you have none to give, no matter. She stood up beside me, catching my arm. Don't you see I am trying to help you? But you are so blind to everything, it's no use. If it's not in Mrs. Ashley's nature to plan the months ahead, why has she been sending her allowance out of the country week by week, month by month throughout the winter? How do you know, I said, that she has done that? My father has means of knowing, she answered. These things could not be hidden between Mr. Couch and my father, acting as your guardian. Well, what if she did, I said. There were debts in Florence. I have known that all along. Creditors were pressing to be paid. From one country to another, she said. Is it possible? I would not have thought so. Isn't it more likely that Mrs. Ashley hoped to build up something for her return, and that she spent the winter here only because she knew you came legally into your money and your property on your 25th birthday, which was yesterday? Then, with my father no longer guardian, she could bleed you as she chose. But there was suddenly no need. You made her a present of everything you had. I could not believe it possible that a girl I knew and trusted could have so damnable a mind and speak. That was the greatest hell. With so much logic and plain common sense to tear apart another woman like herself. Is it your father's legal mind speaking in you, or you yourself? I said to her. Not my father, she said. You know his reserve. He has said little to me. I have a judgment of my own. You set yourself against her from the day you met, I said. A Sunday, wasn't it, in church? You came back to dinner and did not say a word, but sat there at the table with your face all stiff and proud. You had made up your mind to dislike her. And you, she said, do you remember what you said about her before she came? I can't forget the enmity you had for her. Enmity meaning hostility. And with good reason. There was a creaking movement from the side door near to the choir stalls. It opened, and the cleaner, a little mousy woman, Alice Tabb, crept in with broom in hand to sweep the aisles. She glanced at us and went away behind the pulpit, but her presence was with us, and solitude had gone. It's no use, Louise, I said. You can't help me. I am fond of you, and you of me. If we continue talking, we shall hate each other. Louise looked at me. Her hand dropped from my arm. Do you love her then so much? She said. I turned away. She was younger than myself, a girl, and she could not understand. No one could ever understand save Ambrose, who was dead. What does the future hold now for either of you? Asked Louise. Our footsteps sounded hollow down the aisle. The shower that had spat upon the windows ceased. A gleam of fitful sun lit the halo on St. Peter's head in the south window, then left it dim once more. I asked her to marry me, I said. I have asked her once and twice. I shall continue asking her. That's my future for you. We came to the church door. I opened it and we stood in the porch again. A blackbird, heedless of the rain, was singing from the tree by the church gate. And a butcher's boy, his tray upon his shoulder, went past it whistling for company, his apron above his head. When was the first time that you asked her? Said Louise. The warmth was with me once again, the candlelight, the laughter, and suddenly no light, and suddenly no laughter, only Rachel and myself. Almost in mockery of midnight, the church clock struck 12 of noon. On the morning of my birthday, I told Louise. She waited for the final stroke of the bell that sounded so loud above our heads. What did she answer you? She said. We spoke at cross purposes, I answered. I thought that she meant yes when she meant no. Had she read the document at that time? No. She read that later that same morning. Below the church gate, I saw the Kendall groom and the dog cart. He raised his whip at the sight of his master's daughter and climbed down from the trap. Louise fastened her mantle and pulled her hood over her hair. She lost little time in reading it then and driving out to Pelham to see my father, said Louise. She did not understand it very well, I said. She understood it when she drove away from Pelham, said Louise. I remember perfectly, as the carriage waited and we stood upon the steps, my father said to her, "The remarriage clause may strike a little hard. You must remain a widow if you wish to keep your fortune." And Mrs. Ashley smiled at him and answered, "That suits me very well." The groom came up the path, bearing the big umbrella. Louise fastened her gloves. A fresh black squall came scudding across the sky. The clause was inserted to safeguard the estate, I said, to prevent any squander by a stranger. If she were my wife, it would not apply. That is where you are wrong, said Louise. If she married you, the whole would revert to you again. You had not thought of that. But even so, I said, I would share every penny of it with her. She would not refuse to marry me because of that one clause. Is that what you are trying to suggest? The hood concealed her face, but the blue eyes looked out at me, though the rest was hidden. A wife, said Louise, cannot send her husband's money from the country, nor return to the place where she belongs. I suggest nothing. The groom touched his hat and held the umbrella over her head. I followed her down the path and to the trap, and helped her to her seat. I have done you no good, she said, and you think me merciless and hard. Sometimes a woman sees more clearly than a man. Forgive me for hurting you. I only want you to be yourself again. She leaned to the groom. Very well, Thomas, she said. We will go back to Pelham. And he turned the horse, and they went away up the hill to the high road. I went and sat in the little parlor of the Rose and Crown. Louise had spoken true when she told me she had done me no good. I had come for comfort and found none, only cold, hard facts, twisted to distortion. All of what she said would make sense to a lawyer's mind. I knew how my godfather weighed things in the balance, without allowance for the human heart. Louise could not help it if she had inherited his shrewd, strict outlook and reasoned accordingly. I knew better than she did what had come between Rachel and myself. The granite slab above the valley in the woods, and all the months that I had never shared. Your cousin Rachel, Rinaldi said, is a woman of impulse. Because of impulse, she had let me love her. Because of impulse, she had let me go again. Ambrose had known these things. Ambrose had understood. And neither for him nor for me could there ever be another woman or another wife. I sat a long while in the chill parlor of the Rose and Crown. The landlord brought me cold mutton and some ale, though I was not hungry. Later I went out and stood upon the quay and watched the high tide splashing on the steps. The fishing vessels rocked at their buoys, and one old fellow, seated across a thwart, bailed out the water from the bottom boards of his boat. His back turned to the spray that filled it again with every breaking sea. The clouds came lower than they had before, turning to mist, cloaking the trees on the opposite shore. If I had wished to return home without a soaking, and Gypsy without a chill, I had best return before the weather worsened. No one remained now without doors. I mounted Gypsy and climbed the hill, and to spare myself the further mileage of the high road, turned down where the four roads met, and into the avenue. We were more sheltered here, but scarce had gone 100 yards before Gypsy suddenly hobbled and went lame. And rather than go into the lodge and have the business of removing the stone that had cut into her shoe and having gossip there, I decided to dismount and lead her gently home. The gale had brought down branches that lay strewn across our path, and the trees that yesterday had been so still tossed now and swayed and shivered with the misty rain. The vapor from the boggy valley rose in a white cloud, and I realized with a shudder how cold I had been the livelong day since I had sat with Louise in the church, and all the while in this fireless parlor at the Rose and Crown. This was another world from yesterday. I led Gypsy past the path that Rachel and I had taken. Our footmarks were still there, where we had trodden in around the beeches for the primroses. Clumps of them nestled still, dejected in the moss. The avenue seemed endless, with Gypsy hobbling, my hand upon her bridle guiding her, and the dripping rain found its way down the collar of my coat to chill my back. When I reached home, I was too tired to say good afternoon to Wellington, but threw him the reins without a word, leaving him staring after me. God knows, after the night before, I had little desire to drink anything but water, but being cold and wet, I thought a taste of brandy might bring some sort of warmth to me, however raw. I went into the dining room, and John was there, laying the table for dinner. He went to fetch me a glass from the pantry, and while I waited, I saw he had laid 3 places on the table. On his return, I pointed to them. "Why 3?" I said. "Miss Pascoe," he replied. "She's been here since 1 o'clock. The mistress went calling there this morning, not long after you had gone. She brought Miss Pascoe back with her. She's come to stay." I stared at him, bewildered. "Miss Pascoe come to stay?" I said. "That's so," he answered. "Miss Mary Pascoe, the one that teaches in Sunday school. We have been busy getting the pink room ready for her. She and the mistress are in the boudoir now." He went on with laying of the table, and leaving the glass upon the sideboard without bothering to pour the brandy, I went upstairs. There was a note upon the table in my room, Rachel's hand upon it. I tore it open. There was no beginning, only the day and date. "I have asked Miss Mary Pascoe to stay here with me in the house as a companion. After last night, I cannot be alone with you again. You may join us in the boudoir if you wish, before and after dinner. I must ask you to be courteous. Rachel." She could not mean it. It could not be true. How often we had laughed about the Pascoe daughters, and more especially about chattering Mary, forever working samplers, visiting those poor who had rather be left alone. Mary, a stouter, even a plainer edition of her mother. As a joke, yes, Rachel could have invited her as a joke, merely for dinner, so as to watch my glum face at the end of the table, but the note was not written as a joke. I went out onto the landing from my room and saw that the door of the pink room was open. There was no mistake. A fire burned in the grate. Shoes and a wrapper were laid out upon the chair. There were brushes, books, and the personal paraphernalia of a stranger all about the room. And the further door, usually kept locked, which communicated with Rachel's suite of rooms, was locked no longer, but wide open too. I could even hear the distant murmur of voices from the boudoir beyond. This, then, was my punishment. This, my disgrace. Mary Pascoe had been invited to make a division between Rachel and myself, that we might no longer be alone together, even as she had written in her note. My first feeling was one of such intense anger that I hardly knew how to contain myself from walking along the corridor to the boudoir, seizing Mary Pascoe by the shoulders and telling her to pack and be gone, that I would have Wellington take her home in the carriage without delay. How had Rachel dared to invite her into my house on such a pretext, miserable, flimsy, and insulting, that she could no longer be alone with me? Was I then doomed to Mary Pascoe at every meal? Mary Pascoe in the library and the drawing room? Mary Pascoe walking in the grounds? Mary Pascoe in the boudoir? Forevermore, the interminable chatter between women that I had only endured through force of habit over Sunday dinner? I went along the corridor. I did not change. I was still in my wet things. I opened the boudoir door. Rachel was seated in her chair, with Mary Pascal beside her on the stool, the pair of them looking at the great volume with the illustrations of Italian gardens. "So you are back," said Rachel. "It was an odd day to choose to go out riding. The carriage was nearly blown from the road when I went down to call at the rectory. As you see, we have the good fortune to have Mary here as a visitor. She is already quite at home. I am delighted." Mary Pascal gave a trill of laughter. "Such a surprise, Mr. Ashley," she said, "when your cousin came to fetch me. The others were green with envy. I can hardly believe yet I am here. And how pleasant and snug it is to sit here in the boudoir. Nicer even than below. Your cousin says it is your habit to sit here of an evening. Do you play cribbage? I am wild for cribbage. If you cannot play, I shall be pleased to teach you both." "Philip," said Rachel, "has little use for games of chance. He prefers to sit and smoke in silence. You and I, Mary, will play together." She looked across at me, over Mary Pascal's head. No, it was no joke. I could see by her hard eyes that she had done this thing with great deliberation. "Can I speak to you alone?" I said bluntly. "I see no need for that," she answered. "You are at liberty to say anything you please in front of Mary." The vicar's daughter rose hurriedly to her feet. "Oh, please," she said, "I don't wish to make an intrusion. I can easily go to my room." "Leave the doors wide open, Mary," said Rachel, "so that you can hear me if I call." Her eyes, so hostile, remained fixed on me. "Yes, certainly, Mrs. Ashley," said Mary Pascal. She brushed past me, her eyes googling, leaving all the doors ajar. "Why have you done this?" I said to Rachel. "You know perfectly well. I told you in my note." "How long is she to stay?" "As long as I choose." "You will not be able to stand her company for more than one day. You will drive yourself mad as well as me." "You are mistaken," she said. "Mary Pascal is a good, harmless girl. I shall not talk to her if I do not wish for her conversation. At least I feel some measure of security with her in the house. Also, it was time. Things could not have continued as they had been. Not after your outburst at the table. Your godfather said as much before he left." "What did he say?" "That there was gossip about my being here, which your boast of marriage will have done little to improve. I don't know what other people you have chatted to. Mary Pascal will silence further gossip. I shall take good care of that." Was it possible that my action of the night before could bring about such change, such terrible antagonism? "Rachel," I said, "this can't be settled in a moment's conversation with the doors open. I beg of you, listen to me. Let me talk to you alone, after dinner, when Mary Pascal goes to bed." "You threatened me last night," she said. "Once was enough. There is nothing to settle. You can go now, if you wish, or stay and play cribbage here with Mary Pascal." She turned again to the Book of Gardens. I went from my room. There was nothing else to do. This then was my punishment for that brief moment of the night before, when I had put my hands about her neck. The action, instantly repented and regretted, was unforgivable. This, then, the reward. As quickly as my anger had come, it went, turning, with heavy dullness, to despair. Oh God, what had I done? Such a little while ago, so few hours in time, we had been happy. The exultation of my birthday eve and all the magic was now gone, frittered away by my own fault. Sitting in the cold parlor of the Rose and Crown, it had seemed to me that perhaps in a few weeks Her reluctance to become my wife might be overcome. If not immediately, then later. If not later, then what matter, so long as we could be together. In love, as on my birthday morning. Hers the decision, hers the choice, yet surely she would not refuse. I had been almost hopeful when I had come into the house, but now the stranger, the third person, misunderstanding all about us still. Presently, as I stood in my room, I heard their voices approach the stair, and then the sweep of the gowns descending. It was later than I thought. They must be ready dressed for dinner. I knew I could not face the business of sitting with them. They must dine alone. Anyway, I was not hungry. I felt cold and stiff. Probably I had taken chill and would be better in my room. I rang the bell and told John to make my apologies, but I would not be down to dinner. I was going straight to bed. This made a pother, as I feared it might, and Seacombe came up, concern upon his face. Unwell, Mr. Phillips, sir? May I suggest a mustard bath and a hot grog? It comes of riding out in such weather. No, thank you, Seacombe, I replied. I'm a little tired, that is all. No dinner, Mr. Phillip? We have venison and apple pie. It is all ready to serve. Both the ladies are in the drawing room now. No, Seacombe. I slept badly last night and shall be better in the morning. I will tell the mistress, he said. She will be much concerned. At least by remaining in my room, it might give me a chance to see Rachel alone. After dinner, perhaps, she would come up and inquire about me. I undressed and got into my bed. Undoubtedly, I must have caught some sort of chill. The sheets seemed bitter cold, and I threw them off and got between the blankets. I felt stiff and numb, and my head throbbed, things most unusual and unknown. I lay there, waiting for them to finish dinner. I heard them pass from the hall into the dining room, the chatter ceaseless. I was spared that at any rate, and then, after a long interval, back again to the drawing room. Some time after 8 o'clock, I heard them come upstairs. I sat up in bed and put my jacket round my shoulders. This, perhaps, was the moment she would choose. In spite of the rough blankets, I was still cold, and the stiff pain that was about my legs and neck shifted in full measure to my head, so that it seemed on fire. I waited, but she did not come. They must be sitting in the boudoir. I heard the clock strike 9, then 10, then 11. After 11, I knew that she did not intend to come and see me that night at all. Ignoring me, then, was but a continuation of my punishment. I got out of bed and stood in the passage. They had retired for the night, for I could hear Mary Pascal moving about in the pink bedroom, and now and then an irritating little cough to clear her throat, another habit she had taken from her mother. I went along the corridor to Rachel's room. I put my hand upon the handle of the door and turned it, but it did not open. The door was locked. I knocked, very softly. She did not answer. I went slowly back to my own room and to my bed and lay there, icy cold. I remember in the morning that I had dressed, but I have no recollection of John coming in to call me, nor that I breakfasted, nor of anything at all, but only the strange stiffness in my neck and the agonizing pain in my head. I went and sat on my chair in the office. I wrote no letters. I saw no one. Sometime after midday, Seacombe came to find me to tell me that the ladies were awaiting luncheon. I said I wanted none. He came near to me and looked into my face. Mr. Phillip, he said, you are ill. What is it? I don't know, I said. He took my hand and felt it. He went out of the office and I heard him hurry across the courtyard. Presently the door opened once again. Rachel stood there with Mary Pascal behind her and Seacombe also. She came towards me. Seacombe says you are ill, she said to me. What is the matter? I stared up at her. Nothing of what was happening was real at all. I hardly knew that I was sitting there in my office chair, but thought myself to be upstairs in my room, cold, in my bed, as I had been the night before. When will you send her home? I said. I won't do anything to harm you. I give you my word of honor. She put her hand on my head. She looked into my eyes. She turned swiftly to Seacombe. Get John, she said. Both of you. Help Mr. Ashley to bed. Tell Wellington to send the groom quickly for the doctor. I saw nothing but her white face and her eyes. And then, over her shoulder, ludicrous somehow, out of place and foolish, the startled, shocking gaze of Mary Pascal fixed upon me. Then nothing, only the stiffness and the pain. Back in my bed again, I was aware that Seacombe stood by the windows, closing the shutters, drawing the curtains, bringing the room to darkness which I craved. Possibly the darkness would ease the blinding pain. I could not move my head upon the pillow. It was as though the muscles of my neck were taut and rigid. I felt her hand in mine. I said again, I promise not to harm you. Send Mary Pascal home. She answered, Don't talk now. Only lie still. The room was full of whispers. The door opening, shutting, opening once again. Soft footsteps creeping on the floor. Clinks of light coming from the landing, and always this furtiveness of whispers, so that it seemed to me, in the sudden sharp delirium that must be sweeping me, that the house was filled with people, a guest in every room, and that the house itself was not large enough to contain them. They stood shoulder to shoulder in the drawing room and in the library, with Rachel moving in the midst of them, smiling, talking, holding out her hands. I kept repeating over and over again, send them away. Then I saw the round, speckled face of Dr. Gilbert looking down on me. He, too, then was of the company. When I was a lad, he had come to treat me for the chicken pox. I had scarce seen him since. So you went swimming in the sea at midnight, he said to me. That was a very foolish thing to do. He shook his head at me as if I were still a child, and stroked his beard. I closed my eyes against the light. I heard Rachel say to him, I know too much about this kind of fever to be mistaken. I have seen children die of it in Florence. It attacks the spine and then the brain. Do something for God's sake. They went away, and once again the whispering began. This was followed by the sound of wheels on the drive and a departing carriage. Later, I heard someone breathing close to the curtains of my bed. I knew then what had happened. Rachel had gone. She had driven to Bodham to take the coach for London. She had left Mary Pascal in the house to watch me. The servants, Seacombe, John, they had all departed. No one was left but Mary Pascal. Please go, I said. I need no one. A hand came out to touch my forehead, Mary Pascal's hand. I shook it off, but it returned again, stealthy, cold, and I shouted loud to her to let go. But it pressed down upon me hard, gripping like ice, and so to ice it turned on my forehead, on my neck, clamping me close, a prisoner. Then I heard Rachel whisper in my ear, "Dear, lie still. This will help your head. It will be better by and by." I tried to turn, but I could not. Had she not gone to London after all? I said, "Don't leave me. Promise not to leave me." She said, "I promise I will be with you all the time." I opened my eyes, but I could not see her. The room was in darkness. The shape of it was different, not the bedroom that I knew. It was long and narrow like a cell. The bedstead hard like iron. There was one candle burning somewhere behind a screen. It was a niche. On the wall opposite knelt a Madonna. I called loudly, "Rachel! Rachel!" I heard footsteps running and a door opening, and then her hand in mine, and she was saying, "I am with you." I closed my eyes again. I was standing on a bridge besides the Arno, making a vow to destroy a woman I had never seen. The swollen water passed under the bridge, bubbling, brown, and Rachel, the beggar girl, came up to me with empty hands. She was naked, save for the pearl collar around her throat. Suddenly, she pointed at the water, and Ambrose went past us, under the bridge, his hands folded on his breast. He floated away down the river, out of sight. And slowly, majestically, his paws raised stiff and straight, went the body of the dead dog after him. Chapter. Talk about chapter 23, tightening the psychological vice. I find Daphne du Maurier so fascinating because now she is deliberately forcing us as the reader and the listener into the same unstable mental space that Philip is occupying. Because look at what just happened. We have Louise. Oh, sweet Louise, I'm so glad you're back. She's logic, she's steadiness, she's reason, she's grounded observation. And then we have the other woman, we have Rachel, who is emotion, ambiguity, absolutely seduction. I think that she played a part. She's dependent, and she's a mystery. And we have Philip, and he just rejects logic at every single turn. And now, what happens? I haven't been using a lot of the symbols that I see as I'm reading. I was doing that in the last book that we write together in Rebecca. I love the way du Maurier uses nature and flowers. And I think that Philip's body collapsing, I think that that's not accidental. I think that the storm outside is mirroring the storm inside of Philip's mind. He returns home. He's physically chilled. He just throws the reins at, I forget who was waiting. Was it John? He doesn't even tell them that Gypsy's been hurt. This poor horse, every time he takes it out, it's either coming back completely dehydrated, and now she's got a stone in her foot. So he throws the reins at him. He's physically chilled. He's emotionally agitated. He's avoiding places that they were, but he had to go a certain way, and he sees their footsteps still in the path. He's mentally obsessive, and the fever overtakes him almost immediately to come home and find this note. Oh yeah, I had Mary Pascal move in with us, and just her whole demeanor has changed. And I think that this is probably the first time I've actually been terrified of this novel. We no longer know whether Rachel is a caretaker, is she a manipulator, is she a victim, is she a predator, or is she all four simultaneously? I don't trust her. I am on Team Louise. she told him what any woman would say. Women know other women. I think women, we are just built with that compass inside of us. You know, we know which direction the compass is always, we know where the truth is. I love that saying where he said the truth usually will reveal itself when you're like close to death, or maybe to the very pure or the very young. He's so misguided. And that final image is just so haunting, because we've seen this when he traveled to Florence. Before he met Rachel, he was traveling to meet this woman that Ambrose had married. And, you know, I had said this when I read it the first time. My great-grandfather had told us when he left Italy to come to America, and he had to leave my grandmother and 4 children behind because he couldn't care for them. He had to wait until he was established here to then send for them, and then he would send money home because it was so destitute. That image that du Maurier painted in this novel just reminded me of the things that my great-grandfather told me and my grandmother, of like when they did finally return to Italy. At some point they went back and traveled back to see family, just how destitute and poor they were, and that he's having those images come back to him in this delirium, and seeing Ambrose float down that river, and also, you know, the dog was just so haunting. You know, he's delirious. He wants Mary Pascal removed. Rachel is holding his hand, or at least we think that she is, and she's promising that he will never be alone. And that is either, which I don't think she's capable of, loving or deeply sinister. Probably sinister, and she's probably just putting on a show in front of everyone that is there, because he hears all these people. You know, where the doctor got the idea that he was swimming in the sea, I have no idea, unless he did that the night before. When it comes to Rachel, you know, du Maurier just refuses to tell us who she really is. But Louise's role is so important, because she is essentially functioning as us, as the reader and the listener, the rational conscience. She sees what Philip cannot see, or refuses to see. Louise just doesn't see Rachel clearly. She sees Philip clearly also. She sees his emotional instability. She sees how susceptible he is, how vulnerable he is. She sees Rachel's ability to redirect every situation. That was another haunting thing, when her father told her, you know, if you get remarried, you know, this all, you know, and she was just like, this all would, the money would redirect itself back to Philip. And she was like, I'm not worried about getting remarried. Like, I'm set. You know, there's not going to be an estate left by the time this one's done. And she also sees the danger that obsession, what a danger obsession is, because he has it disguised as devotion. So she sees very clearly Louise. And you know, he's not, it's this obsession. He's not only obsessed with her, of Rachel herself, he's obsessed with defending her too. And that's just a key psychological shift. You know, he'll never understand reason. He didn't understand his godfather. He hated him. He wanted him, you know, he wanted to do what he wanted to do before he was 25. And he hated his godfather for stepping in. I'm hoping the godfather has made some assurances for him, but I don't know. I don't know if he made any assurances for him for something like, you know, my boy, you couldn't see clear enough ahead, and so I had this clause written in there that maybe she didn't see. I don't know. I think I'm becoming delirious. Because, you know, he just doesn't evaluate any evidence. I thought Louise, knowing him as well as she did, you know, but he passes it off as her father being a lawyer, and then she just, you know, she picked up this sensibility from him, not on her own. He doesn't see people as individuals. which is sad. I wonder how the servants in the house feel about Rachel, if they see any of this, if they think that she could be trusted. I was hoping that we were going to get another tidbit from Louise, because she's not there, but she has so much insight into who Rachel is. And with Philip lacking the ability to evaluate any type of evidence, the only thing that Philip really knows how to do is interpret everything through the lens of preserving his image of her. And then there was one other point I wanted to make, and that was the strangling scene in the previous chapter, because now the danger is no longer theoretical. Physical violence has entered the relationship. And I was also trying to remember, now that we're in this fever dream with Philip, I know he said that John came into the room and he didn't pour the brandy, but we don't know if he drank the brandy, because all I kept thinking about was Ambrose's head hurting like that. Did he drink anything? Was he poisoned? So is this illness natural? It might be. It was freezing cold. He was walking through the rain. I don't think it's psychosomatic. It could just be mental and physical exhaustion. But this is Daphne du Maurier. She wants you spiraling through the chapters the way that Philip is spiraling. And I think that the real terror here is that we are going into chapter 24. The terror and the brilliance of her writing is that we still don't know who Rachel is. So let's continue on to chapter 24. Chapter 24 of My Cousin Rachel, just chapter 25 and 26 to go, which is why I said we don't even know who Rachel is still. The first thing that I noticed was that the tree outside my window was in leaf. I looked at it, puzzled. When I had gone to bed, the buds were barely formed. It was very strange. True, the curtains had been drawn, but I well remembered noticing how tight they were upon my birthday morning when I leaned out of the window and looked out across the lawn. There was no pain now in my head, and the stiffness had all gone. I must have slept for many hours, possibly a day or more. There was no reckoning with time when anyone fell ill. Surely I had seen him many times, though, old Dr. Gilbert with his beard, and another man as well, a stranger. The room in darkness, always. Now it was light. My face felt scrubby. I must be in great need of a shave. I put my hand up to my chin. Now this was madness, for I too had a beard. I stared at my hand. It did not look like mine. It was white and thin, the nails grown to a fine length. Too often I broke them riding. I turned my head and saw Rachel sitting in a chair near to my bed, her own chair from the boudoir. She did not know I saw her. She was working upon a piece of embroidery and wore a gown I did not recognize. It was dark, like all her gowns, but the sleeves were short, above the elbow, and the stuff was light, as though for coolness' sake. Was the room so warm? The windows were wide open. There was no fire in the grate. I put my hand up to my chin again and felt the beard. It had a pleasant touch to it. Suddenly I laughed, and at the sound she raised her head and looked at me. "Philip!" she said and smiled, and suddenly she was kneeling by my side with her arms about me. "I have grown a beard," I said. I could not stop myself from laughing, for the folly of it, and then, from laughing, turned to coughing, and at once she had a glass with some ill-tasting stuff inside it, which she made me drink, holding it to my lips, then putting me back again upon the pillows. This gesture struck a chord in my memory. Surely, for a long while, there had been a hand with a glass making me drink that had come into my dreams and gone again. I had believed it to be Mary Pascal and kept pushing it away. I lay staring at Rachel and put out my hand to her. She took it and held it fast. I ran my thumb along the pale blue veins that showed always on the back of hers and turned the rings. I continued thus for quite a time and did not talk. Presently I said, "Did you send her away?" "Send who?" she asked. "Why, Mary Pascoe," I said. I heard her catch her breath, and glancing up I saw that her smile had gone and a shadow had come to her eyes. "She has been gone these 5 weeks," she said. "Never mind that now. Are you thirsty? I have made you a cool drink with fresh limes sent down from London." I drank, and it tasted good after the bitter medicine she had given me. "I think I must have been ill," I said to her. "You nearly died," she answered. She moved, as though to go, but I would not have it. "Tell me about it," I said. I had all the curiosity of someone who has been asleep for years, like Rip Van Winkle, to find the world had gone along without him. "If you wanted to revive in me all those weeks of anxiety, I will tell you," she answered. "Not otherwise. You have been very ill. Let that be enough." "What was the matter with me?" "I have small regard for your English doctors," she replied. "On the continent we call that illness meningite. Meningite, I guess she means meningitis, which here no one knew anything about. That you are alive today is little short of a miracle." "What pulled me through?" She smiled and held my hand tighter. "I think your own horse strength," she answered me, "and certain things I bade them do. Making a puncture on your spine to take the fluid was but one. Also, letting your blood stream a serum made from the juice of herbs. They called it poison, but you have survived." I remembered the cordials that she had made for some of the tenants who had been sick during the winter, and how I had teased her about it, calling her midwife and apothecary. "How do you know about these things?" I said to her. "I learned them from my mother," she said. "We are very old and very wise who come from Florence." Those words struck some chord in memory, but I could not recollect just what it was. To think was still an effort, and I was content to lie there in my bed with her hand in mine. "Why is the tree in leaf outside my window?" I asked. "It should be in the 2nd week of May," she said. That I had lain there knowing nothing all those weeks was hard to understand, nor could I remember the events that had brought me to my bed. Rachel had been angry with me for some reason that escaped me, and had invited Mary Pascoe to the house, I knew not why. That we had been married the day before my birthday was very certain, though I had no clear vision of the church or of the ceremony, except that I believed my godfather and Louise had been the only witness, with little Alice Tabb, the church cleaner. I remembered being very happy, and suddenly, for no reason, in despair. Then falling ill. No matter, all was well again. I had not died, and it was the month of May. We have a knack, don't we, dear listeners, for being in time with the book and the present time? We're in the month of May also. "I think I am strong enough to get up," I said to her. "You are no such thing," she answered. "In a week, perhaps, you shall sit in a chair by the window there to feel your feet, and later walk as far as the boudoir. By the end of the month, we may get you below and sitting out of doors, but we shall see." Indeed, my rate of progress was much as she had said. I have never in my life felt such a ninny as the first time I sat sideways on the bed and put my feet upon the floor. The whole room rocked. Seacombe was one side of me and John the other, and I as weak as a baby newly born. "Great heavens, madam, he has grown again," said Seacombe, with the consternation on his face so great I had to sit down again for laughter. "You can show me for a freak at the Bodum Fair after all," I said, and then saw myself in the mirror, gaunt and pale, with the brown beard on my chin, for all the world like an apostle. "I've half a mind," I said, "to go preaching about the countryside. Thousands would follow me. What do you think?" I turned to Rachel. "I prefer you shaved," she said gravely. "Bring me a razor, John," I said, but when the work was done and my face bare again, I felt I had lost some sort of dignity and was reduced again to schoolboy status. Those days of convalescence were pleasant indeed. Rachel was always with me. We did not talk much because I found conversation tired me sooner than anything else and brought back some shadow of that aching head. I liked, more than anything, to sit by my open window and to make diversion. Wellington would bring the horses and exercise them round and round the gravel sweep in front of me, like show beasts in a ring. Then, when my legs were stronger, I walked to the boudoir and our meals were taken there. Rachel waiting upon me and caring for me like a nurse with a child. Indeed, I said to her on one occasion, if she was doomed to a sick husband for the rest of her life, she had no one to blame but herself. She looked at me strangely when I said this, and was about to speak, then paused and passed on to something else. I remembered that for some reason or other our marriage had been kept secret from the servants. I think to allow the full 12 months to lapse since Ambrose died before announcing it. Perhaps she was afraid I might be indiscreet in front of Seacombe, so I held my tongue. In 2 months' time we could declare it to the world. Until then, I would be patient. Each day I think I loved her more, and she more gentle and more tender than ever in the past months of winter. I was amazed when I came downstairs for the first time and went out into the grounds to see how much had been achieved about the place during my sickness. The terrace walk was now completed, and the sunken garden beside it had now been hollowed away to a great depth and was ready to be paved with stone, and the banks faced. At the moment it yawned, dark and ominous, a deep, wide chasm, and the fellows digging there looked up at me, grinning, as I stared down at them from the terrace above. Tamlin escorted me with pride to the plantation. Rachel had called in to see his wife at the nearby cottage, and though the camellias were over, the rhododendrons were still in bloom, and the orange burberries, and leaning to the field below, the soft yellow flowers of the laburnum trees hung in clusters, scattering their petals. "Oh boy, we'll have to shift them through another year," said Tamlin. "At the rate they're growing, the branches lean down too far to the field, and the seeds will kill the cattle." He reached up to a branch where the flowers had fallen. The pods were already forming, with the little seeds within. "There was a fellow the other side of St. Austell who died eating these," said Tamlin, and he threw the pod away over his shoulder. "I don't think that that's St. Austell. I think that that's a street named Austell." I had forgotten how brief was their flowering time, like every other blossom, also how beautiful, and suddenly I remembered the drooping tree in the little courtyard in the Italian villa, and the woman from the lodge taking her broom, sweeping the pods away. There was a fine tree of this kind, I said, in Florence, where Mrs. Ashley had her villa. Yes, sir, he said. Well, they grow most things in that climate, I understand. It must be a wonderful place. I can understand the mistress wishing to return. I don't think she has any intention of returning, I replied. I'm glad of that, sir, he said, but we heard different, that she was only waiting to see you restored to health before she went. It was incredible what stories were made up from scraps of gossip, and I thought how the announcement of our marriage would be the only means to stop it. Yet I was hesitant to broach the matter to her. It seemed to me that once before there had been discussion on that point, which had made her angry before I was taken ill. That evening, when we were sitting in the boudoir and I was drinking my tisana, as had become my custom before going to bed, I said to her, "There is fresh gossip around the countryside." "What now?" she asked, lifting her head to look at me. "Why, that you are going back to Florence," I replied. She did not answer me at once, but bent her head again to her embroidery. "There is plenty of time to decide about these things," she said. "First, we must get you well and strong." I looked at her, puzzled. Then Tamlin had not been entirely in error. The idea of going to Florence was there, somewhere in her mind. "Have you not sold the villa yet?" I asked. "Not yet," she answered, "nor do I intend to sell it after all, or even let it. Now things are changed, and I can afford to keep it." I was silent. I did not want to hurt her, but the thought of having the two homes was not one that pleased me very well. In fact, I hated the very image of that villa which I held still in my mind, and which I thought by now she hated too. "Do you mean you would want to spend the winter there?" I asked. "Possibly," she said, "or the late summer, but there is no necessity to talk about it." "I have been idle too long," I said. "I don't think I should leave this place without attention for the winter, or, in fact, be absent from it at all." "Probably not," she said. "In fact, I would not care to leave the property unless you were in charge. You might like to pay me a visit in the spring, and I could show you Florence." The illness I had suffered had left me very slow of understanding. Nothing of what she said made any sense. "Pay you a visit?" I said. "Is that how you propose that we should live? Absent from one another for long months at a time?" She laid down her work and looked at me. There was something of anxiety in her eyes, a shadow on her face. "Philip, dear," she said, "I have said I don't wish to talk about the future now. You have only just recovered from a dangerous illness, and it is bad to start planning the time ahead. I give you my promise. I will not leave you until you are well." "But why?" I demanded. "Is there any need to go at all? You belong here now. This is your home." "I have my villa too," she said, "and many friends, and a life out there, different from this. I know, but nonetheless I am accustomed to it. I have been in England for 8 months and now feel the need for change again. Be reasonable and try to understand." "I suppose," I said slowly, "I am very selfish. I had not thought of it. I must make up my mind, then, to the fact that she would want to divide her time between England and Italy, in which case I must do the same, and start looking about for a bailiff to put in charge of the estate." The idea of separation, of course, was preposterous. "My godfather may know of someone," I said, speaking my thoughts out loud. "Someone for what?" she asked. "Why, to take over here when we are absent," I replied.
I think it hardly necessary, she said. You would not be in Florence more than a few weeks if you came, though you might like it so much that you would decide to stay longer. It is very lovely in the spring. Spring be damned, I said. Whatever date you decide upon to go, I shall go too. Again the shadow on her face, the apprehension in her eye. Never mind that now, she said. And look, past 9 o'clock, later than you have been as yet. Shall I ring for John, or can you manage alone? Ring for no one, I said. I got up slowly from my chair, for my limbs were still most damnably weak, and I went and knelt beside her and put my arms about her. I find it very hard, I said, the solitude of my own room and you so close along the corridor. Can we not tell them soon? Tell them what? She said. That we are married, I replied. She sat very still in my arms and did not move. It was almost as if she turned rigid, like something without life. Oh God, she whispered. Then she put her hands upon my shoulders and looked into my face. What do you mean, Philip? She said. A pulse somewhere in my head began to beat, like an echo to the pain that had been there the past weeks. It throbbed deeper, ever deeper, and with it came a sense of fear. Tell the servants, I said. Then it will be right and natural for me to stay with you, because we are married. But my voice sank away to nothing because of the expression in her eyes. But we are not married, Philip dear, she said. Something seemed to burst inside my head. We are married, I said. Of course we are married. It happened on my birthday. Have you forgotten? But when had it happened? Where was the church? Who was the minister? All the throbbing pain returned again, and the room swung round about me. Tell me it's true, I said to her. Then suddenly I knew that all was fantasy, that happiness which had been mine for the past weeks was imagination. The dream was broken. I buried my head against her, sobbing. Tears had never come from me like this before, not even as a child. She held me close, her hand stroking my hair, and never speaking. Presently I won command over myself again and lay down in the chair, exhausted. She brought me something to drink, then sat down on the stool beside me. The shadows of the summer evening played about the room. The bats crept forth from their hiding places in the eaves and circled in the twilight outside the window. It would have been better, I said, had you let me die. She sighed and laid her hand against my cheek. If you say that, she answered, you destroy me too. You are unhappy now because you are still weak. But presently, when you are stronger, none of this will seem important. You will go about your work again on the estate. There will be so much to see to that, from your illness, has been allowed to lapse. The full summer will be here. You can swim again, go sailing in the bay. I knew from her voice that she was talking to convince herself, not me. What else? I asked. You know very well that you are happy here, she said. It is your life and will continue to be so. You have given me the property, but I shall always look on it as yours. It will be a sort of trust between us. You mean, I said, that letters will pass between us from Italy to England, month after month, throughout the year? I shall say to you, dear Rachel, the camellias are in bloom, and you will reply to me, dear Philip, I am glad to hear it. My rose garden is doing very well. Is that to be our future? I could see myself hanging about the gravel sweep of the morning after breakfast, waiting for the boy to bring the post bag, knowing full well there would be no letter in it, except some bill from Bodum. I would be back again each summer, very probably, she said, to see that all went well. Like the swallows, who come only for the season, I replied, then take wing again the first week in September. I have already suggested, she said, that you visit me in the spring. There is much that you would like in Italy. You have not traveled, save the once. You know very little of the world. She might have been a teacher, soothing a fractious child. Perhaps it was thus she looked upon me. What I have seen, I answered, gives me a distaste for all the rest. What would you have me do? Potter about a church or a museum, guidebook in hand, converse with strangers to broaden my ideas? I would rather brood at home and watch the rain. My voice was harsh and bitter, but I could not help it. She sighed again, and it was as though she searched about for some argument to prove me that all was well. I tell you again, she insisted, that when you are better, the whole of the future will seem different to you. Nothing is so much changed from what it was. As to the money, she paused, looking at me. What money? I said. The money for the property, she went on. All that will be placed on a proper footing, and you shall have enough to run the estate without loss, while I take what I need out of the country. It is all in process of arrangement now. She could take every farthing for all I care. What had any of this to do with what I felt for her? But she went on talking. You must continue to make what improvements you feel justified in doing, she said rapidly. You know I shall query nothing. You need not even send me the bills. I trust your judgment. Your godfather will always be near to give advice. In a little while, everything will seem to you just the same as it was before I came. The room was deep in twilight now. I could not even see her face for the shadows all about us. Do you really believe that? I said to her. She did not answer at once. She searched for some excuse for my existence to pile upon those that she had given me already. There were none, and she knew it well. She turned towards me, giving me her hand. I must believe it, she said, or I would have no peace of mind. In all the months I had known her, she had given me many answers to the questions, serious or otherwise, that I had put to her. She had been laughing, some evasive, yet each one had some feminine twist to make adornment. This was direct at last, straight from the heart. She must believe me happy to have peace of mind. I had left the land of fantasy to her to enter into it. Two persons, therefore, could not share a dream, except in darkness as in make-believe, each figure then a phantom. Go back, if you will, I said, but not just yet. Give me a few more weeks to hold in memory. I am no traveler. You are my world. I sought to evade the future and escape, but when I held her, it was not the same. Faith was gone, and the first ecstasy. Chapter. Phew, I needed a break after this chapter. It pretty much opens and closes the same way, but the closing was more of an awakening. So Philip opens his eyes, believing he has crossed into a new life, married, loved, chosen, only to slowly realize that much of what sustained him existed not in reality, but in this fever and longing and imagination. And I'm going to tell you what this reminded me of. But let me keep my thoughts straight for chapter 24. This reminded me of another movie. The beard, the changing leaves, the weakness in his body, all becoming physical evidence that time has passed while he drifted somewhere between life and a dream, or if we are to believe Rachel, life and death. He almost died, you know. And Rachel remains exactly as she always has been in this novel. She's just impossible to fully grasp, you know. Is he... I don't know. I mean, if we're to believe what he is telling us, because he wakes up delusional, he thinks he's married. So is she really there? Was she a devoted caretaker who sat beside Philip while he was dying and nursed him back to life? Every time I read that she gave him a drink, I had a chill go up my spine. And then he's remembering things. He's remembering, oh yeah, I remember a hand, you know, picking my head up and giving me a sip of medicine and then putting my head back down. And then she also has not only this bitter medicine that she's giving him, she has this limeade. Now my girlfriend makes this, you know, she's from the Dominican Republic, and she would say, Lisa, I make this all year round. I stick a bunch of limes in my blender with water and ice and sugar, and we've never been sick, because that's why the sailors, they would give them, they would call them limeys, because they would drink this limeade to fight off scurvy and stuff. So is she a devoted caretaker? Did she sit beside him thinking that he was going to die? Especially if she had something to do with it, then she would sit beside him, thinking to herself, phew, I don't have anything to worry about anymore. The estate is fully mine. Or was she carefully preserving her position, as I said, and loosening this emotional hold she once had over him? Even Daphne du Maurier refuses to give us certainty. The laburnum trees hanging over the terrace walk feel so ominous here. Can't read my own handwriting. Because they are beautiful. They are beautiful trees. Their branches stretch out. Sometimes they touch one another, especially if you have like a terrace walk. You plant them on either side and they stretch out and they begin to intertwine, and they have these beautiful golden pods that hang from them. They're like buttercup yellow, and inside the seeds are poisonous. Sometimes they mix these trees with lilacs because the yellow and the purple are so pretty together. But again, it's the symbolism of the tree, right? It's a perfect symbol for Rachel herself and for Philip's obsession with her. Beautiful, golden, but poisonous. The bitter drinks, the tisana, the echoes of Ambrose's illness, the blurred line between medicine and danger, all of it keeps us, as the reader or the listener, trapped in the same uncertainty Philip has lived in from the beginning. He was uncertain about her in the beginning. He had how many different women that he conjured up in his mind of who she really was? And I think the most heartbreaking moment of the chapter is not this horrible illness, meningitis, if we're to believe her. It's the shattering of the illusion. Philip finally understands that the life he imagined with Rachel was never fully shared by her. And while he built an entire future with her in his mind, she remained untethered. Emotionally, even physically now, because she's talking about, or she's telling the people that work for her now, not the people that she works with any longer. They work for her now. That, she's talking about her villa and how she wants to return there. She now has the money to keep both places. She doesn't have to sell or let, as they used to say, which means rent the villa out to anyone. It's all hers. I can go back to it anytime I want. So he built this idea of a future with her in his mind while she remained emotionally and physically untethered, free to leave for Florence, free to return to her villa, free to belong only to Rachel. And for the first time, Philip sees the difference between ecstasy and reality. He says that the dream is broken. That happiness, that first intoxicating taste of passion and fantasy, it's gone. And what remains is grief, maybe humiliation, always the longing and the painful return to a world that is so ordinary, but not just ordinary. It's just empty. It's bleak. There's a lot of hours to fill in the day. And with only 2 chapters left, the atmosphere now feels to me not just quiet, but also dangerous. Because once the illusion dies, what is going to take its place? We already had him on the brink of madness and fever and delirium. And him, I'm sure there's going to be moments where he's going to decipher between what was real and what was fantasy and what was brought on from the fever and memories. And I still can't get over that vision that he had of being back in Arno and Ambrose in the river and the dog also. But I was thinking when I was about this chapter and how he is, he's kind of in this existence between, for me it was like life or death, like living between, is he going to be okay? But he's having these dreams, so he is kind of living in a dream also. And it reminded me so much of Vanilla Sky, where Tom Cruise is in this, well, I mean, what is he in really? Because he dies, but they preserve his body so he can wait until a time that his face can be fixed, so he's not as disfigured. So he's in this suspended illusion of dreaming about Penelope Cruz and a life that, that one chance, that one choice, that one decision that he made, where he didn't make that decision, and he's living this life with Penelope Cruz, and they're happy and they're together until the madness sets in as usual. And I just think it's such an excellent comparison, because both stories trap us, the audience, whether you're watching a movie or you're listening to this or you're reading it, inside a damaged male consciousness where there is desire, there's fantasy, there's memories, there's fear, and then there's reality. And they begin bleeding together until neither the character nor the audience can fully separate them anymore. And I think what makes the comparison especially strong is this idea of the constructed emotional reality. In Vanilla Sky, Tom Cruise is essentially living inside a dream architecture built from, again, his choices, his longing, his regret. And he knew that he fell in love with Penelope, her character, I can't remember their names, the moment he met her. He knew it. And she knew it. And he falls into this romantic obsession of idealized love. Penelope, her character, becomes less a real woman and more a projection of, I think, the same thing as Philip. Being chosen, being loved, beauty, comfort, salvation, right? Because he was a cad, and emotional completion. And this is very close, in my opinion, to what Philip is doing with Rachel. I think in some aspects, and maybe, remembering the movie, like I feel right now I want to watch Vanilla Sky, because anytime, I get in these moods like once a year when I want to watch the movie because I love it so much. Or if it's on, I'm like, no, don't even start it from here, start it from the beginning. I got to see it all over again. And I think that Rachel almost stops functioning as a fully human being. And she becomes this fantasy, even in a way, like a mother. We know she was a lover, or I would say, yeah, they did sleep together. Now she's a healer. She's a temptress, she's danger. But then she's a sanctuary. But then she's also destruction. Like, all these things go on with Rachel all at one time. And the fever dream marriage sequence feels exactly like those Vanilla Sky moments where reality slips just enough that you as a viewer, I think that's why I watch this so many times, is because I always pick up on something new. And I always walk away with questions and new answers. Like, did this happen? Was it imagined? Was it wished into existence? Philip waking with the beard, the long nails, the changing seasons outside the window. It's almost cinematic in the same way. Who was it? Oh, I can't think of who it was where this happened. Time has moved while his mind remained inside a suspended emotional state. And I think both works, the book and the movie, is love still love when most of it exists inside the projection and fantasy? I don't think so. I don't think so. I really don't. I don't know. I mean, like I said, I knew in Vanilla Sky he fell in love with her instantly. That wasn't the case with Philip. But there were similarities. Because Philip is in love with who he thinks Rachel is. He's actually cultivated who she is in her mind. He thinks that he knows her, that even when he's presented with logic and reason, he has an answer. No, you're wrong. You're wrong. That's not who she is. She's impulsive and she's emotional, and here's why. She impulsively came here to England. She stayed because she was emotionally happy here. And I think he constructs her into who he needs her to be, and the emotional intoxication that she creates inside of him, not necessarily Rachel herself. And I think Rachel's response to the marriage fantasy is one of the coldest moments in the novel, because she doesn't cruelly mock him. She just steps out of the dream. That's what hurts him most. She returns to reality while he is still emotionally living inside the dream, inside the fever. And she's trying to convince him, you're going to be okay. When you get stronger, you're going to go back to doing things that you love to do. You're going to go out sailing. You're going to do this. You're going to do that. And he says, I don't know if she's trying to convince me or her. There's something very frightening about your world changing to such a drastic extent, where this bleak world that you're in, you get up in the morning, you get dressed, you have your breakfast, you go down, you do your bills, you maybe you go into town, maybe you visit with the tenants. Like, this is all hours of the day to fill. And then when you are intoxicated by being in love with someone else, the world just changes. The colors are brighter, you're happier, you're kinder to people, you're more understanding. And then you know that when that doesn't work out, sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, that the fear of going back to a world that is colorless is just, it's so depressing. It's so depressing to
think about, you just don't want to do anything. You become unmotivated. You know, what's the point? What's the use? What's the sense? What's the purpose? And he says to her, you should have just let me die. Because he's going to die a slow death. That's what I think is going to happen. I don't know what could possibly happen to him. And if he did take up with Louise or any other woman, he would only make their life a torment. Because they could never live up to this fantasy that he had in his mind. What was that Taylor Swift line? Like, men only want love when it's, I don't know. I can't remember the line, but they only want love when it's painful in another way. So here we are, 2 chapters left. I think there's 7 minutes left in this video, and I think we can all use a little music and a little chill down from this. I feel like I've been trapped in a fever dream. I really do. I cannot wait. I've been saying it time and time again. I cannot wait for this movie. I cannot wait to see it. I am going to watch the original with Richard Burton, and I am then going to watch the remake with Rachel Weisz, who I adore, who is playing currently in Vladimir. So I'm so happy that I had the energy to do this. I took a break. Also, we had to get Foofy in the car, and I will shout out to Jackson Galaxy because Foofy was in my arms and he was happy as a clam with all the tips and tricks that he gave us in moving our cat from Philadelphia to the Jersey Shore. So it was a very pleasant ride, and he's having the time of his life right now in his new digs. Maybe I'll pop a few pictures up. But first, let's get to the music and unwind, shall we? And oh, look at how beautiful this turned out. I hope you enjoyed all those enhancements that got placed. I know there were a few fumbles here and there, and I just left them in. I'm also now looking at my rings on my finger, and I left them behind. I had my son go and pick them up because I left my wedding band at home. And John's like, well, I have to go back into the city. I'll go get them. So, wow, what a beauty this canvas is also. Okay, enough of me. I will see you, as always, in the next time. Enjoy the music. Bye.